Recently, I overheard a helicopter pilot discussing a cultural shift which has crept into his organization. Apparently, management believes that the safety pendulum has swung past reasonable, and now too many flights are being turned down under the auspice of safety, primarily weather issues. And while they admit that a few decades ago the safety culture was too permissive and many flights were attempted in very poor weather, they now feel as though the pendulum is too far on the other side of reasonableness, and that flight crews are being too cautious. Of course, statistics were used to substantiate these claims. Apparently, management reviews all declined flights and then evaluates the reasons provided by the crew. They review the conditions which existed at the time, to include the METAR and TAF for the appropriate period and location. Then this data is compared with the actual conditions which ultimately existed. And apparently, there are many flights which were declined, but in hindsight, management believes should have been accepted. And while such data may be useful in determining a potential loss of revenue, it certainly does not come close to telling the entire story. I recognize that many organizations perform similar assessments, but incomplete analysis has very limited usefulness. We cannot understand the entirety of the situation by looking at half the equation. In this case, we must also review the flights which were actually accepted. To achieve complete understanding, we must know the number of flights which were flown, but subsequent evaluation would indicate that they should have been declined. How many flights were completed, but not really successfully? Allow me to differentiate between a successful flight or merely a completed flight. A successful flight is one where everything goes as planned, not just some or even most things, but everything. While a completed flight is one where the task is accomplished, but with undesirable and/or unexpected complications. Imagine that you depart in marginal weather and it deteriorates during the flight to unacceptable conditions, but you manage to make it through. While this flight would certainly be complete, I pose that it was not successful. Of course, weather is not the only culprit, but accident reports and our own experiences would likely confirm it is the most insidious threat. So if the desire is to have a complete understanding of the situation, we must review the flights which were actually flown, as well as those which were turned down. IIMC is a real risk in our industry. How many near catastrophes were avoided through happenstance, but escape our view because they went unreported? We must take the time to review the flights accepted and evaluate how many of those were successful, i.e. everything as expected, versus how many were merely complete. Something went awry, but we managed to get the job done. And for those flights which were only considered complete, what undesirable factors crept in unexpectedly? HFDM, Helicopter Flight Data Monitoring, is an ever-evolving, improving technology which can capture and provide data for evaluation and lessons learned training. For organizations with limited resources, a thorough and honest post-flight report or dedicated debrief session may prove as useful. Accidents seldom result from the first iteration of an issue, but rather they are often the results of many previous events which escape larger notice. I believe we must expand our perspective. We need to examine the many small, seemingly innocuous events which may occur during completed flights. In this way, we can have a clearer picture of these previously undetected or unreported latent conditions. Such knowledge should provide us the necessary opportunity to eliminate, accommodate, or implement barriers to improve the overall safety. But we must look to see.